Hey, what's up, Rob? So, I was going to do a bit more of some economic ramblings today. I was going to talk about, I guess the topic that I don't know a lot about, but that I'm intrigued about is what I'm taking right now, which is econometrics. And it's the last like 3,500 level requirement aside from basically getting into like my thesis paper and like stuff like that. So getting really close to basically being done. There's going to be an econometrics 2 next semester, which is new. Um, And so far from what I've seen, I'm really intrigued in taking it because basically, I don't know how well I can describe this, but up until this point in economics, we've basically done things in two variables. And they've applied something of what they call Ceteris Paribus, which I don't know if you know what that means, but simply put, it means if all other things remain the same. So basically, you just ignore everything except the two variables you want to focus on, which is really nice for like teaching a concept because it's easy to be like, all right, like let's just ignore that for now, pretend it doesn't exist, focus on all right, supply and demand, that kind of thing. But the reality of the situation is that that's not how life works. Like we don't just get to say like, all right, well let's see how taxes affect, or that's a bad example. Let's see how like wage affects education or something. There's so many variables that go into that aside from just those two factors that you can't just say like, all right, let's ignore everything else. Like you could, but then your model doesn't actually reflect real life. And that's where you get into econometrics, which is the goal of econometrics is to take, and it's difficult because economics is a social science. It's not like you rarely get hard, fast, like experimental data. So that's what we kind of spent the first few classes talking about. It was a bit elementary, but it was still helpful, I think, of setting the grounds to talk about like, all right, well, what is the differences between observational data and experimental data? And basically, she was kind of just proving the point that you can't really get econometric experimental data because one, time takes too long. Like you can, it's just pretty rare. And the instance she gave of like education, I think I flipped it in what I said a second ago. I said the impact of wage on education. The ones we've been using in class is the impact of education on wage, although both would have interesting. I think wages impact on education would be more for like your children or something like that. But nonetheless, if we go with the one that we've used in class, it would be immoral and just unrealistic to say like take kids and be like, hey, you're going to have 5 years of education and then you're going to go begin working and then you're going to have 10 years and you're going to have 15 and et cetera, et cetera. Like that, you just can't do that. And so econometrics tries to take samples and they do it the way they make what they've described so far is basically they use random sampling to circumnavigate a lot of variables. I'm like, it makes relative sense to me as to why that kind of works, but basically the premise is like, if you think small class sizes have better impact on education, then the way to imply that or apply that fairly without other factors having involvement, whether it be like teachers' skill and stuff like that, is you have small classes at big schools, larger schools, smaller schools. Like it's random. You might have a small school having like tons of people in a class, and a large school might have like a really really tiny class. And if you do it on a large enough scale and you apply it randomly, theoretically the data is not skewed by any sort of specific results is the idea. Um, so I didn't get really through everything, but I'm excited about how econometrics can potentially take like data and apply it to real life without just ignoring a lot of things. Love you, Rob.